and you step in and allow them to better themselves, that's really the definition of being truly empowered. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you to whoever sent it in. The next question that I got sent in is how to accept failure. Woo, shall I go into a tangent for this question? For those of you who don't know my journey, I won Miss Universe in 2018, but I joined another international pageant in 2016 called Miss World, and I represented the Philippines. So when I won Miss Universe, that was my second time representing my country on an international stage, which is a huge, huge honor. But on my first pursuit in pageantry, I lost. I was a third runner-up, and I failed to get the crown for my country. That I took as a very hard failure. And it really hit me hard. Why? Because I had invested so much into it. That's not an investment of money, that's an investment of heart, of effort, of time, of resources. And I even had people around me who also invested their time, their creativity into my journey. And so to not be able to bring that title home for my country and my family and my community, that was a huge hit for me. And I'm not gonna lie, it took me a lot of time to be okay. Because at first I wanted to be in denial, like, you know what, I can just shrug that off, that's fine, it's not the end of the world. But I had to also acknowledge that it's okay to hurt. Kasi human din ako eh. And it was a human experience, it's a human feeling. And if you look at all of the people who have succeeded, and I hope that you will see that also in my story, it always takes failure to create a huge success. It's never a first time, first try story. It never is. And I hope that there are younger people watching today, and I hope to encourage you that if you're failing or going through a failure, that is the road to progress, and it's the road to success. So I just want to acknowledge that and tell you that you're doing a really good job. Failure doesn't mean that you're not meant to be there. Failure means that you need to learn something, that you need to grow in order to get to the place that you want to go. So thank you for those that sent their questions. You can also send more in the little speech box with a little question mark, and I can see your questions there. And thank you. We have over 2,000 people watching with us this afternoon. Thank you for all the love. I'm seeing all of your questions here also, and all of your comments. I really appreciate that you're spending the time with me today. So from my 15-year-old conversation, I'm going to graduate over to what I would say to my 20-year-old self. So just for reference, I'm currently 27. And this would be the advice that I would give to myself back then. When I was 20, I had left home 2 years prior, so I'd moved out of my parents' house. I was living alone, and I was being hit with the harsh realities of adulting. It's so funny because when you're at school, you're like, I can't wait to be an adult. I can't wait to have freedom. I can't wait to do all these things that I want to do. But adulting comes with so much responsibility. And you quickly realize, like, oh my gosh, my parents did so much for me. And it's so comfortable being in a safe space. So when I was 20, I had taken the risk of pursuing modeling, and I got my degree online. I didn't actually go to university physically. I did it by correspondence or online. And that was a big decision for me because I grew up my whole life trying really hard in school to be academic, to go to university, because that was always in my mind, like, this is what I want to do. So that was a huge, like, divert of what I thought I was going to do. But when I was 20, that's when I started to come up against a lot of people telling me, and this, I know that being a model isn't exactly relatable for a lot of people, but people may also perceive you according to your job. And this is just what I'm trying to get at here. Because my job was a model, I was perceived that I wasn't smart, that I had nothing to offer intellectually. I was told that my body was ridiculed. I was called too big, too fat. I was told that my body shape wasn't right. I was also like, just, I was degraded in such a way as a woman that I was just an image and that I didn't actually have anything to offer other than that. And that was something that I never expected to come up against. And I think that, no matter what work or job title you find yourself in as a woman, there will always be that perception that's attached to it. For example, if you're a teacher, you might be perceived as maybe you wanted to do something else, but since you couldn't, you just taught it instead. Or like if you're a writer, maybe you're perceived as someone who doesn't like to go out and just wants to stay home on their computer all the time. Or if you're an athlete, maybe you're perceived as someone who will spend all day in the gym and have no time for their family. I think there's all these little perceptions that's always attached to a job title. And it was really discouraging at times to be judged on that, because we as people, we judge. And it just kind of, I turned it into my fuel. So that would be my advice to my 20-year-old self, is like, take that frustration of how they perceive you and turn it into your fuel to somehow prove them wrong. It's not a revenge tactic. It's more of like, I'm going to develop myself. I'm going to grow myself so that one day I will have something to show for it. I won't have to go up and tell you. You'll be able to see it. So that would be the advice to my 20-year-old self. Another advice would be to budget your money and to learn about being smart with creating security for yourself, whether that be financially or with where you're staying. And also that family is very important. I know that when we're in our first years of exploring the world and exploring our career, and usually some of us leave our family homes or we travel, it's sometimes easy to forget the people who raised us, as just seeing them as always being there. We take them for granted, but family is so important, because your support system is so important. And so that would be the advice that I would tell my 20-year-old self. So Ewan, when it comes to kind of reflecting in this manner, I'm a very analytical person naman, and I hope that the way I'm saying it is really helpful for you guys to understand. And maybe I hope that you find something in the lessons that I've learned to take for your own journeys or whatever you're going through, because I know at this time that we're all going through so much. 2020 and 2021 is constantly challenging us, but I have no doubts that you guys can rise above it. So keep sending me in your questions, and I'm going to answer some more questions now. So the question I've got sent is, best way to introduce feminism among young girls. Ooh, thank you for whoever sent that. I think we're in an age of so much information, right? We're definitely not in a lack of information, but there's so much information that is not, it's not well researched, it's not refined, it's almost an overload of information. So even though there's a flooding of information, a lot of us are still misinformed. For feminism to be understood by young girls, if you look at feminism as supporting other women to be whatever they want to be. So that means empowering them. You know how we talked about empowering earlier, meaning giving them the tools, giving them that could be education, that could be resources, that could be healthy environments, basic health needs, basic needs, and then giving them the opportunity. It means allowing women to lift up each other and to do whatever they want to do, as long as it's respectful and considerate of others. That's what feminism is to me. It's not about being better than men. It's not about being radical. It's just about having women's rights as human rights and it being equal. I hope that's easy to understand for you guys. So if someone were to ask you if you're a feminist, I'd like you to give your comments below, and I would love to see them. And the next in question is, how do we inspire women to love their body? This is very complex. It's a very complex thing to love yourself. I mean, we talk about it a lot, right? Like, it's the way that it's perceived sometimes is like, why don't you just love yourself? As if it's like a switch that you can switch on. Just like confidence. I think loving yourself and confidence is very intertwined. But it is such a big journey. I mean, and I think we need to start by breaking that perception that you can reach a certain place where you look a certain way or you have certain things that you'll love yourself because of that. And I want you to know that that is not true. Um, Even me, I may be a Miss Universe, and I may be what people think is like living a somewhat perfect life or an aspirational life, but I have a lot of insecurities. I have a lot of days where I just feel like I want to cover up today. I don't feel like going out and being in front of a camera today. I don't feel like myself. I don't feel pretty today. Like it's a normal thing. And the thing is, you need to start defining what beauty is for you, and really coming to into terms of what is your unique assets that you have, and seeing the beauty in your uniqueness. Because I feel like when we constantly compare ourselves, and it's so easy to do on social media, when we can constantly compare ourselves, and I know that as women we do this every day, I think every hour. It's so easy for that to steal your joy. It's so easy to compare yourself, and then your joy is just stolen, and you feel like it really gets into you. It buries itself down into your heart, and then you start to feel unconfident, you start to feel incapable, you start to question yourself, your worth. Am I enough? Am I too much? Why can't I be like that? Or why does she have something that I don't? Comparison is such a hard thing to do, so I encourage you just to stop comparing yourself, because you are a unique, beautiful being, and there is no one like you, and that is so special. If I can encourage someone today, when I did my journey to Miss Universe, and beauty queens and beauty pageants have been around for how many years now? I think 60, 70 years. There was a lot of people telling me that I should have a walk like this girl, or I should have a dress like this girl, I should move like this girl and talk like this girl. But I was so stubborn. And I was so stubborn. I'm a typical Capricorn. I was very stubborn to be myself, because I told myself that I will be the only one up on that stage, just like you may be in your school or in your work. You are the one up there. There's no one else there with you. And I needed to define for me what I wanted to be, because that's when I would feel most beautiful, and that's when I could feel ownership of what I was doing. Now imagine putting all of your time and your effort and your energy into a pursuit only to try and do it as someone else. Like, don't you think that if you were to do it as yourself, that would be so much fulfilling when you finally are successful because you succeeded being you? So Ewan, thank you so much for whoever sent that question, and I really appreciate it. That's a really good question. And with that, we're going to transition to conversations that I would have with my 25-year-old self, which is just 2 years ago. So for me at 25, I was a reigning Miss Universe. So if you can imagine, if we can contrast that for just a second, if you look at me at 20, me being lost, I didn't know what my direction was. I was just a model. I was struggling making ends meet. Financially, I was going up against a lot of like outward criticism and also inward criticism. Like, shouldn't you know what you're doing? Shouldn't you have something more to show by now? I mean, all of my peers were almost halfway through their college degrees, and here I was just working and living and trying to make something for myself, to 25, where I had reached my dream, something that I didn't even know that was my dream, but when I finally did it, I felt like I was made for this. Like, that's how much 5 years can make. And so I just want to take this example of my life, and I feel like it can happen to anyone. 5 years can change in anyone's life. You could be in a rut, if you're in a rut today, or if you're in a place that you feel like you can't get out of, or if you feel hopeless, if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel like you failed and you don't even know which way is up or what to do. In 5 years' time, I want to encourage you that you could be like on top of that mountain, of that pinnacle that you said was your dream. Because it happened to me, then it can happen to you. So aside from that tangent, going back, advice that I would give my 25-year-old self. So Again, I was flung into the public eye overnight. When I won Miss Universe, it was like it happened instantly, and it was very hard for me to adjust. Being a shy, private girl, being a very shy private girl in person, to suddenly everyone wanted to know my business, everyone wanted a piece of me, it felt like. And I just didn't know really how to cope with that at first, because it made me feel very overwhelmed. Suddenly, everything that I said, I had to watch, I had to make sure that I could express fluently and cohesively what I wanted to say, because if I would missay something, it could be construed in a different light, or I had this perception that every time I walked out of the house I needed to be done up in a certain way. It was a lot of outward pressure. But I also had to learn the lesson, and this is a lesson that I would like to share on to all